And this is leading me to a big statement. The big statement perhaps is that the concept of the American dream, the concept of owning your own home, the concept of having your big home too, because that's a symbol that you've made it, is perhaps the wrong symbol because it's taking us away from the idea of community. And
have I not been clear?
And right, people would say, no, I live in the Beverly Hills zip code or the Atherton zip code or whatever. You enter any country, there's always a zip code, right? Where you're affluent, you're part of a community. You're not part of a community. You're buying status. You have your big mansion and, you hobnob with a few people, but there's no real community the way you're forced to do it when you're a student. And I'm assuming if you're a student, many people can relate to the idea of the dorms. That's actually the opposite of the American dream because you don't have the wealth, you don't have the luxury to afford your own place, yet those are the best years of people's lives. Whereas we have another crisis happening with senior people living alone and bored and lonely. Loneliness is affecting the mental health of many people, and COVID also brought this to the front. So we're missing the point of the idea of community is perhaps what we value in society takes us away from community. We are a very individualistic culture, the West. The West as a whole, some parts more and less than others, but America at least, and perhaps the UK, very individual societies versus more Asian and rural, societies.
Yeah, I think it's really gotten a lot worse with technology use. I mean, people are I think they spend average of 3 hours a day on like non-business stuff on their smartphones, and
Wait, is that good or bad? 3 hours a day? Should it be higher or should it be lower if it's non-business?
I think it should be lower. I mean, I do think this stuff, listen, if you can be a happy, joyous person, healthy person and do all this stuff and like, I use my technology fairly liberally, but after I exercise, and after I do a bunch of other stuff, I make sure. And I still like question its role in my life. I do think it makes it far easier to be alone. People just weren't like, it just wasn't that easy or that interesting to be alone back in the day, and I don't think that virtual is a replacement for.
And going back to urban design too, the way cities were, you're walking, you're going to bump into people. Yeah. Whereas in certain societies, we're in our car or in our...
This is not, like, for me, this is not esoteric. Like, I actually did a spreadsheet and I'm happy to share it with you. I've lived in 38 different housing situations, from single family housing, and I've lived in some pretty nice single family housing, guys. I've lived in some, ask around. I go to some nice zip codes, okay? But I've also lived on a kibbutz, on the Lebanese border. I've traveled, up and down the Nile in Egypt. I've been to Thailand and, in Singapore and, in New Zealand. And I have a basis of comparison. Here's where I get on my high horse. It's like, don't freaking tell me that a McMansion is as nice as this other thing. Because I've been to both of them, and one is like a lonely, isolating experience that's just designed to, I see your apartment. That's a really sensibly sized apartment. It's got a nice amount of fenestration. It's got cement floors. That's like, this guy's got some because one of my big things is efficiency. It's luxurious to have a comfortable apartment. So if you're going to have glass that lets up, I had a friend who lived at the Richard Meyer building at Grand Army Plaza in Brooklyn, right? And and he said he could never get the heat right? Because one side of the building was connected to the thermostat on the other, and we get this blazing sun. There's been numerous studies that have shown that most people who have these glass units, they close the drapes 70, 80% of the time, so floor to ceiling views, people don't look at them because there's too much light, I don't know why I started on that rant.
I think what happens is we in society work really hard, buy a bigger house, get a promotion, work even harder and buy a bigger house so you're keeping up with the Joneses. You inherently get lonely and you're craving something different. And then you eventually burn out and you go through a midlife crisis. And then you go for 2 years on a little, travel around the world where you're doing the opposite, right? I don't think people dream of leaving their McMansion. I'm sort of being provocative here with an example, right? They're not leaving their mansion or McMansion to go stay in another mansion, right? They want something different. They want to get back to normal. And this is why Airbnbs are very popular. People want to be more in rural nature areas. They appreciate, and cabins and being amidst all the nature is very healing for our soul, I guess. And it's a symptom of the society we live in and what we value. We're getting taken away from nature by buying things that our ego wants rather than perhaps what we really need and our soul needs.
Yeah. And I guess I'm, my startup Run House is a function of a midlife crisis. I had a pretty famous divorce. My wedding was in the New York Times and blah, 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 blah. I won't go into it and touch it in the PropTech world heavily. And I actually had my McMansion. I had my dwell micro apartment, which for me was my McMansion. It was like I made it, I had this embodied thing, this embodied vision, really. Like I wasn't just talking the talk. I put my money on the line, and built it out. And, it was right over Prospect. I actually overlooked Prospect Park, and I had all this thing together. And going onto a deeper level, none of these, it's like you said, like we're looking for these external things to say that we're a success, versus, sort of these kind of outcroppings of our success. And like something that flow from our success, like we're looking for the outside to validate us, like these things that I'm not saying, I guess I'm saying that like you can have nice stuff, right? but that stuff's not that's not success. And that's definitely not power. And that's really what people want. People want to feel power. And I've never made a lot of money, but I've always had a lot of power because I did manage to live and really develop a lot of very strong relationships inside and outside the industry. So yeah, the middle. So what is the definition of success, right? And I have a whole very esoteric side to me, and I didn't go to college, and I went to an ashram and rode my bike across, the country. And I'm very interested in, what is the definition of success? I had, my father passed away at 67, and he was a success. He was a success. He was a early tech pioneer, early days, 3Com and Novell. The amount of stress that he went through, like people didn't see him break his back in the airport in 1987 and was like laid up. They don't think about the fact that he died of cancer at 67 and like his relationship, like being around, being in airports for 20 years, so, I'm far more circumspect about what defines success. And the thing that's really done it. I mean, one of the main things that's done to me, and it's far more relatable than some of the esoteric stuff is running. I'm a runner. I run around 40 miles a week. A daily run. It's as much of a practice for me as any yogi, and I've practiced a lot of yoga, so I can say that with and sort of the applied principles. Also, it's a very meditative act. It's not about excess. It's about performance, right? It's about essentially aligning our body to our movement, which is really the essence of what's wrong with our built-in environment. There's so much excess, right? And so much of it has little to do with moving anything forward. It's just serving our basic needs to connect or to be healthy and stuff like that. So really going on a deep personal journey. And this is like, this might sound like, airy fairy and stuff like that, but you talk to any, I don't know if you're a serious runner, but like you talk to any serious runner and they get it. They get it they get it fairly instantly. And, really developing that personal relationship. And then developing, first of all, actually, these communities already exist, to be very, very clear. And this is the shortcomings of co-living, and something that you kind of touched on. Co-living is just like for people who are new to town, like for single people who are new to town. Like for me, that's not enough. Sorry. Like I need a little bit more, granular segmenting there. Like I get along with a lot of people, but I don't necessarily like hanging out with a lot of people, and I sure as shit don't want to live with, or live around a lot of types of people. Like I value people who appreciate work, and that's a kind of a fundamental thing with running. Like you understand that if you to get a goal, you have to do stuff. Like somehow, and you have to do something besides buy some, like and again, this kind of goes back to like what are our intrinsic motivations, and I think they have a lot to do with health, with like really being as healthy as we can, not just sort of this baseline thing, which I think is what so many people fall into. And there's a an analogy between real estate and the body. Like if people, like I talked about this with my runner friends all the time. It's like if you guys knew how good it feels to be, to live like this, like you just be like, oh my God, sign me up. Right.
Well, that's not how most people think. Most people look at Instagram, they see these fake versions of people who are deeply often insecure putting it out there so they get more likes and ego gratification. And you see that and you get this keeping up with the Joneses feeling where I need this to be happy. And so we as human beings defer our happiness for a later point in time. And when we get it, we're disillusioned. And the human nature has no limit to its want, to its greed, right? What we think we need. And ultimately it takes a crisis or it takes a situation to take us out of our environment and make us realize this isn't living. This is burnout. This is stress. This is tiring. You gave the example of your father who was very successful, who, worked hard, but to the point where, that's not, you can look at your father as one example of a great role model, but on the other hand, what you have to do to achieve that is unsustainable, and we've got to find a balance somewhere.
I almost lost it. I mean, in 2009, I couldn't keep my proverbial shit together, and I was like, I can't. And I knew I was going down the same route as my dad, and like being a very successful dead 67-year-old, or 65-year-old or whatever, right? Whatever it gets me. And that's not success to me. I don't think that needs to be the cost of success,
But to make all of this actionable, we've talked a lot about philosophy, right? How can we action this so that we can live better lives? I'm supposing outside of doing something radical, like knocking down your home and go buying a plot of land and living in a tent, right? What can we do? I know we can, and you were on a Netflix documentary, right? On the minimalism side of things. Any actionable advice that you could share with our listeners?
Well, I mean, I'll definitely, I'm going to do a little plug for Run House. I mean, it's about making it easy. And essentially when you have what I call like an additive market economy where everyone's trying to get a piece and essentially trying to create market segments for housing, for restaurants, for all this stuff, instead of like actually trying to simplify, which is really what people want. They want fewer steps. They don't want more steps. They don't want maximized revenue streams in their lives. They want actually minimal ones, right? And actually, like, it's kind of a revolution, folks. You're hearing it here. like saving people money can be and simplifying people's life can actually be super duper profitable. Like it can provide a lot of value to people's lives. Like, oh my God, I don't need all these things that I thought I needed. So just making it structurally easy, giving a people place to go and a place built around a real community, which is running, because you do suffer together, no matter what you're and it's very egalitarian. People are all income, like all you need is a pair of shoes, and people of all different incomes are, mixing together. And the thing that matters is your performance, and your performance is it's always grade adjusted, no fluff. You can't pay for, whatever. I ran a 5:23 mile in 2019. I paid for that, but I paid for it in grit. And people, and when you have that on your side, it feels really good. And it feels way better than I have no Instagram. I have like 35 Instagram followers. Like, I don't give a shit, but I get to enjoy great health. So making that really easy. To listeners, go find a run club. It's so much of this stuff used to be handled by religion. I mean, really, like people used to have churches and temples, and they'd go and meet, and then they would do stuff and they would make stuff. And I'm not saying we need to bring those back. And obviously, so many of the religious bodies are just irreparably polluted to have any credibility. But that fundamental need for Congress and the fundamental need for breaking bread and for singing and dancing, like where is all that shit? Where is all that stuff? It's missing. I think, and I think I think it really needs space, but yeah, practical stuff. Go find a run club. Most towns have them, and you're just going to meet really nice people. All of a sudden, like people don't eat well. They don't do a whole bunch of stuff when their body's not used for performance. And I kind of always use this thing like you don't put regular in a Ferrari, and like all of my good habits are a function of its impact on performance, and generally it's around running, but it's also, some of it is around mental clarity, the mental clarity that the running instills in when I'm not running, which is most of the time.
David, thank you so much on that note for coming on the show. It's been a
Zane, pleasure.